The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with voices from 100 different worlds. Ambassador Zethka stood at his podium, his blue skin shining under the bright lights. His forearms moved as he spoke, the way his people always did when they were upset. "This makes no sense," Zethka said, his voice echoing through the massive chamber. "The humans have ships that can destroy our fleets. They have weapons we cannot even understand. Yet they sit in their tiny corner of space like scared children." Veltar, the council's head record keeper, looked up from his datapad. His large eyes blinked slowly as he processed what the ambassador was saying. Veltar's species was known for keeping perfect records and asking the right questions. Today, he had many questions about humanity. "What exactly troubles you, Ambassador?" Veltar asked, his thin voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Zethka pulled up a hologram showing the galaxy. Thousands of systems glowed in different colors, showing which species controlled them. The human territory looked tiny compared to the vast empires around it. "Look at this." Zethka pointed to the small cluster of human worlds. 12 systems. Just 12. My people control over 300 systems, and we are not even close to their military strength. Other ambassadors began to murmur among themselves. The Kree delegate, with her insect-like features, clicked her mandibles in agreement. "The humans stopped our war with the hegemony 3 cycles ago. Their fleet arrived and both our armies simply left. No shots were fired. They just told us to go home. And we did." Veltar had read about that incident. The humans had sent only 50 ships to stop a war between 2 massive fleets. The math did not make sense. Those 50 ships should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, both armies had retreated without explanation. "There have been 17 major conflicts in the past 50 years, Veltar said, reading from his records. Humans appeared at 15 of them. Every time, the fighting stopped. Every time, peace was restored. But they never claimed territory. They never demanded payment. They just left." The Therian ambassador, a massive creature with thick armor plating, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. "Their technology is beyond ours. I have seen their smallest fighters destroy our largest battleships. If they wanted, they could rule the entire galaxy in 10 years. Then why don't they?" asked the Pleiadian delegate, her silver hair floating around her head like liquid metal. "What species gains such power and does not use it?" Veltar felt something cold in his chest. His people were known for their logic and careful thinking. When something did not make logical sense, it usually meant important information was missing, and missing information about a species as powerful as humanity could be dangerous for everyone. "I request permission to investigate," Veltar said, standing from his seat. "Something is very wrong here. We need to understand what the humans are really doing." The council's leader, an ancient being whose species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years, nodded slowly. "Granted. But be careful. Keeper Veltar. Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than ignorance." Later that day, Veltar sat in his private office, surrounded by screens showing human territory. He had spent his life studying different species, learning their patterns and motivations. Most species followed simple rules. They wanted more territory, more resources, more power. The humans broke every rule. His assistant, a young member of his own species named Kulren, brought him files about human military movements. "Sir, I found something strange. The humans have been moving ships to systems with no strategic value. Look at this." Kulren showed him a map of recent human fleet movements. The pattern made no sense. Ships were being sent to dead systems, empty space, and worlds with no resources or inhabitants. "Maybe they are exploring?" Kulren suggested. Veltar shook his head. "These are not exploration ships. These are warships, heavily armed battle fleets moving to empty space. Why would they need weapons if they are just exploring?" He opened another file showing human diplomatic messages. Most species sent messages about trade, territory disputes, or military agreements. Human messages were different. They always seemed to know about conflicts before they happened. They would offer to help solve problems that other species had not even reported yet. It is like they can see the future, Veltar muttered to himself. Sir? Kolren asked. Nothing. Just thinking out loud. Veltar looked at the data again. Book me passage on the next ship to human space. I need to see their territory for myself. Sir, is that wise? The Council does not usually send investigators to study other species without permission. Veltar turned to look at his assistant. Kolren, in all the records we keep, in all the species we have studied, have you ever seen one that gained ultimate power and chose not to use it? No, sir. Neither have I. Which means either humans are completely different from every other species in the galaxy, or they have a reason for their restraint that we do not understand yet. Veltar gathered his files. And given their military power, not understanding their motivations could be the most dangerous mistake the galaxy has ever made. As he prepared for his journey to human space, Veltar could not shake the feeling that he was about to discover something that would change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The humans were hiding something big, and he was determined to find out what it was. The truth, however, was far more terrifying than anything he could have imagined. Veltar's ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. The first thing he noticed was how quiet everything was. Most borders between species were busy with trade ships, patrol vessels, and military checkpoints. Here, space seemed almost empty. His ship's computer beeped softly. Incoming message from human patrol vessel. A human face appeared on his screen. The woman looked young, but her eyes seemed much older. Welcome to human space. Council ship. I am Commander Hayes. Please state your business. I am Veltar, Council Archivist. I am conducting research on galactic trade patterns and would like permission to visit some of your systems. Commander Hayes was quiet for a moment, as if listening to someone Veltar could not see. Permission granted, for designated trade routes only. Please follow the navigation beacon. Do not deviate from the approved path. The connection ended before Veltar could ask questions. This was strange. Most species were happy to show off their territory to Council visitors. Humans seemed to want him to see as little as possible. Veltar followed the beacon to his first stop, a human colony called New Geneva. From space, it looked like any normal colony world. Cities, farms, and factories covered the surface. But as his ship got closer, Veltar noticed something odd. The planet had defensive stations all around it. Not just a few orbital platforms, but hundreds of them. Enough firepower to destroy an entire invasion fleet. That was not unusual for a border world. But New Geneva was deep inside human territory. Why did they need so many defenses? Even stranger, the weapons on the stations were not pointing outward into space. They were pointing down at the planet. Veltar landed at the main spaceport and walked through the city. The humans were friendly enough, but they seemed nervous. Children stayed close to their parents. Adults kept looking up at the sky. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something bad to happen. Excuse me, Veltar said to a shopkeeper. This is a beautiful colony. The human woman smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Yes, we like it here. Very safe. Always protected. Protected from what? The woman's smile disappeared. You should talk to the administrator if you have questions about security. I just run a shop. Veltar tried asking others, but got similar responses. Everyone seemed afraid to talk about why they needed so much protection on a world that appeared to have no enemies. That night, Veltar was reviewing his notes when his ship's sensors detected something unusual. A large fleet was approaching the system. These were not normal human ships. They were bigger, more advanced, and completely black, except for small identification numbers. Veltar watched through his ship's cameras as the Dark Fleet took positions around the planet. The ships moved with perfect coordination, like they had done this many times before. Within an hour, they had completely surrounded New Geneva. His computer could not identify the ship designs. They did not match any human vessels in the Council's database. The technology looked at least 50 years more advanced than anything humans were supposed to have. Veltar tried to contact the fleet, but his messages got no response. When he tried to scan the ships, his instruments gave him confusing readings. Some of the ships seemed to be using technology that bent space in ways that should not be possible. The next morning, the Dark Fleet was gone. When Veltar asked the locals about it, they claimed not to know what he was talking about. The administrator told him he must have seen a training exercise and changed the subject quickly. Veltar left New Geneva with more questions than answers. He visited 2 more human colonies and saw the same pattern. Heavy defenses pointing inward, nervous populations, and mysterious fleets that appeared at night and disappeared by morning. On his 4th stop, a mining station near the edge of human space, Veltar decided to take a risk. Instead of staying at the station, he hid his ship behind a large asteroid and waited. Just after midnight, the Dark Fleet appeared again. But this time, Veltar could see what they were doing. The ships were not just patrolling. They were fighting something. His instruments could barely register what the human ships were shooting at. The enemy appeared on sensors as strange distortions in space, like tears in reality itself. Whatever the humans were fighting seemed to exist partly in normal space and partly somewhere else. The battle lasted 3 hours. Veltar watched human ships fire weapons that made space itself glow and twist. The enemy fired back with something that made Veltar's instruments scream warnings about impossible physics. When it was over, 2 human ships were gone, not destroyed but simply missing, as if they had never existed. As the fleet prepared to leave, one of the ships detected Veltar's hiding spot. Before he could run, a tractor beam grabbed his ship and pulled him toward the largest vessel. Veltar found himself in a docking bay that was bigger than most space stations. The ship he was on was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest vessels the humans were supposed to have. Armed soldiers in black armor escorted him through corridors that seemed to go on forever. They brought him to a meeting room where a human officer was waiting. The woman was older, with gray hair and scars on her face that spoke of many battles. Her uniform had no markings that Veltar recognized. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen," she said. "You have seen something you should not have seen. I am a council archivist. I have diplomatic immunity." "Not out here, you don't." Admiral Chen sat across from him. "The question is, what do we do about it? We cannot let you leave with what you have witnessed. But we also cannot simply make a council representative disappear." "What was that thing you were fighting?" Veltar asked. Admiral Chen looked at him for a long moment. "Something that should not exist. Something that wants to make sure nothing else exists either. I do not understand. Most species in the galaxy think space is empty between the stars. They are wrong. There are things in the dark that hunger for reality itself. Things that can unmake matter, energy, even information. Only humans can see them clearly enough to fight them." Veltar felt his blood turn cold. "How long has this been going on?" "Since we first left Earth, we thought we were exploring the galaxy. Instead, we found a war that has been waiting for someone stupid enough to notice it." Admiral Chen stood up. "Now you have a choice. We can send you home with your memory wiped, or we can show you the truth. But if you choose the truth, you can never unknow it. And knowing it will change everything about how you see the galaxy." Veltar looked at the scarred face of the human admiral and realized that everything the council thought they knew about humanity was wrong. These were not conquerors holding back out of kindness. These were guardians fighting a war that the rest of the galaxy could not even see. "Show me," he said. Admiral Chen led Veltar through corridors that seemed to bend in impossible ways. The ship was larger inside than it had appeared from outside, as if space itself worked differently here. "This is our flagship, the Eternal Vigil," Chen explained as they walked. "It runs on technology we developed specifically to fight enemies that exist partially outside normal reality." They passed groups of humans working at stations covered with instruments Veltar had never seen before. The technology looked both incredibly advanced and disturbingly organic, as if it had grown rather than been built. "Where are we going?" Veltar asked. "To see the source of everything," Chen replied. "The reason humanity will never conquer the galaxy, no matter how powerful we become." Chen reply. Absolute 2. They entered a transport pod that took them through what felt like a journey between dimensions. When they emerged, Veltar found himself on a space station orbiting a dying red star. The star looked wrong somehow, as if its light was being drained away by something invisible. "Welcome to Outpost Prime," Chen said. "This is where it all began." The station was massive, easily the size of a small moon. Thousands of ships moved around it in complex patterns. Some were the black vessels Veltar had seen before. Others were even stranger, built with curves and angles that hurt to look at directly. 47 years ago, Chen began, human explorers found something in this system that should not exist. They took an elevator down to the station's core. As they descended, Veltar felt something wrong with reality around them. His instruments began giving impossible readings. The air itself seemed to whisper in languages that had never been spoken. "Your sensors are picking up the distortion field," Chen explained. "The closer we get to the breach, the less stable reality becomes. Some of our people go insane just from being near it. Others develop abilities that should not be possible." The elevator stopped at what the display said was level 0. The doors opened to reveal a vast chamber with walls made of some kind of crystalline material that seemed to shift between dimensions. At the center of the chamber was something that Veltar's mind refused to process properly. It looked like a wound in space itself, a tear in reality that showed something beyond the normal universe. Through the opening, Veltar could see what lay on the other side, and immediately wished he could not. The other dimension was not empty space. It was full of things that moved with purpose and intelligence, things that existed to consume and destroy. They pressed against the barrier between dimensions like hungry animals trying to break into a house. "The Voidborn," Chen said quietly. "They come from a universe where entropy won instead of order, where destruction is the fundamental force instead of creation. They do not just kill things, they unmake them. They make it so things never existed in the first place." Veltar watched in horror as one of the creatures on the other side touched the barrier. Where it made contact, reality began to dissolve. The crystalline walls started to fade, not breaking but simply ceasing to be. Immediately, human technicians rushed to reinforce that section. They used weapons that fired something Veltar could not identify. Whatever they shot at the barrier seemed to strengthen reality itself, pushing the dissolution back. "How many of these breaches exist?" Veltar asked, his voice barely a whisper. 63 that we know of," Chen replied. "Probably more that we have not found yet. Each one is guarded by human forces. Each one requires constant vigilance to keep sealed. Why can only humans fight them? We are not sure. Something about human consciousness allows us to perceive them clearly. Other species either cannot see them at all, or seeing them drives them insane. We think it has to do with how humans developed on Earth. We evolved to survive in a world full of predators, so our minds are built to recognize and fight threats that want to destroy us." Chen led him to an observation deck where they could see the full scope of the human operation. Thousands of people worked around the clock to maintain the barriers. Scientists studied the creatures beyond, trying to understand them better. Soldiers prepared for battles against enemies that could erase them from existence. "This is why we cannot expand," Chen explained. "Every human ship, every soldier, every scientist is needed for this war. If we pulled our forces away to conquer territory, The barriers would fail. The Voidborn would break through. What would happen if they escaped? Chen's face went pale. They would consume everything. Not just kill it. Make it so it never existed. Stars, planets, entire species would simply stop being. Reality itself would begin to unravel, starting with the most populated areas and spreading outward until nothing remained. Veltar felt sick. How long have you been fighting this war? Since we first found the breach. We have lost entire fleets to keep these things contained. Whole human colonies have been evacuated and turned into fortress worlds. Our brightest scientists spend their lives developing new ways to cage entropy itself instead of advancing human civilization. They watched as alarms began ringing throughout the station. On the screens, Veltar could see that one of the barriers was weakening. The creatures on the other side sensed the weakness and pressed harder against it. Battle stations, came an announcement over the station's communication system. This is not a drill. Breach alert at Station 17. Hundreds of human ships moved toward the failing barrier. Veltar watched as they formed a perfect defensive formation and began firing their reality-strengthening weapons. The battle lasted hours, with several ships disappearing entirely when they got too close to the dissolving sections of space. When it was over, the barrier held, but 12 human ships were gone. Not destroyed in explosions, but simply erased from existence, as if they had never been built. Does this happen often? Veltar asked. Every day, somewhere in human space, Chen replied. We lose people constantly to keep the galaxy safe, and we can never tell anyone about it, because knowledge of the Voidborn gives them more power over reality. The more beings that know and fear them, the stronger they become. Veltar understood now why humans seemed so strange to the other species. They were not conquerors or explorers. They were guardians, fighting a war that no one else could even see. A war where victory meant nothing more than another day of existence for the galaxy. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Because the Council needs to understand, Chen said. We cannot keep doing this alone forever. We need resources, support, understanding. But we cannot tell the whole truth, because the truth itself is dangerous. She handed him a datapad with carefully prepared information. Use it to help the Council understand why humanity deserves support, even if they cannot know exactly what we are fighting. As they prepared to return him to his ship, Veltar realized that his entire understanding of the galaxy had changed. Humanity was not holding back out of choice. They were sacrificing everything to protect species that did not even know they needed protection. The most powerful species in the galaxy was using that power not to conquer, but to ensure that reality itself continued to exist. Before returning to Council space, Admiral Chen gave Veltar access to humanity's classified archives. She assigned a human historian named Dr. Marcus Webb to guide him through the records. These files will show you what this war has really cost us, Doctor, Webb said as they sat in a secure viewing room. Admiral Chen wants you to understand the full price humanity has paid to keep the galaxy safe. The first file Dr. Webb opened made Veltar's heart sink. It was a list of human worlds that no longer existed, not destroyed by war or natural disaster, but completely evacuated and abandoned because of voidborne contamination. New Terra was our first major colony outside the Sol system, Dr. Webb explained, his voice heavy with old grief. Beautiful world, perfect for human life, home to 12 million people. We had to evacuate everyone when a microbreach opened in the planet's core. The file showed images of the evacuation. Massive ships carrying millions of refugees away from their homes. The planet itself looked normal in the pictures, but Veltar could see the wrongness in the way light bent around certain areas. What happened to the world after evacuation? It is still there, technically, Dr. Webb said, but it exists in a state of constant uncertainty. Some days it has oceans, some days it does not. Sometimes the continents are in different positions. Reality became unstable. so we had to quarantine the entire system. Dr. Webb opened another file. This one showed a list of human scientists who had volunteered for the most dangerous research projects. Names, ages, and brief descriptions of what happened to them. Dr. Sarah Kim, age 34, studied void-borne communication patterns. After 6 months of exposure, she began to exist only on Tuesdays. Dr. Robert Chen, age 41, developed weapons to fight reality distortion. He now exists as a mathematical equation that occasionally manifests as a person. The list went on for thousands of names. Brilliant minds that had sacrificed their very existence to understand and fight an enemy that defied comprehension. These people volunteered? Veltar asked. All of them, Dr. Webb confirmed. We never force anyone into the deep research projects. But there is always a waiting list. Humans understand that someone has to do this work, and many are willing to pay the ultimate price to protect others. The next file showed military records. Battle reports from engagements that officially never happened. Veltar read about human fleets that had fought impossible battles against enemies that should not exist. One report described the Battle of Kepler Station, where a major breach had opened near a populated trade route. 300 human ships had held the line for 18 hours, while civilians evacuated nearby systems. When it was over, only 37 ships remained, and those survivors reported that some of their missing comrades had never existed in the first place. The hardest part, Dr. Webb said quietly, is that we cannot mourn our dead properly. When someone is unmade by the Voidborn, we lose not just their life, but all evidence they ever lived. Photos fade, records disappear, even memories become uncertain. Families wake up feeling like someone is missing but cannot remember who. Veltar felt sick reading these reports. The human sacrifice was far greater than he had imagined. Entire generations had grown up knowing that their purpose was to fight monsters that the rest of the galaxy could not even see. Show me the current situation, Veltar requested. Dr. Webb brought up a real-time display of human forces throughout their territory. Veltar could see the pattern now that he knew what to look for. Every human colony, every military base, every research station was positioned to contain or monitor breach activity. Their entire civilization was built around this hidden war. We have 47 major containment facilities, 63 confirmed breaches, and another 100 sites where we monitor space for new tiers in reality. Dr. Webb explained. At any given moment, we have over 2 million people dedicated to this war. Our entire military, our best scientists, our most advanced technology, all of it focused on keeping these things contained. Suddenly, alarms began ringing throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and an automated voice announced, "Code Black. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Therefore," Dr. Webb's face went white. "Code Black means a major containment failure. Something big has broken through." They ran to the command center, where dozens of humans worked frantically at stations covered with displays showing space distortions and fleet movements. Admiral Chen stood at the center, coordinating the response. "Report," she demanded. "Breach Sigma-7 has destabilized," a technician called out. "The barrier is failing, and we are detecting massive voidborne activity. They are trying to push through in force." On the main screen, Veltar could see what was happening. A section of space near a human mining colony was literally dissolving. Reality flickered in and out of existence as creatures from the other dimension pressed against the weakening barrier. "How many people are in the affected area?" Chen asked. 40,000 miners and their families," came the reply. "Colony ship Harmony is 3 hours away." "We cannot wait 3 hours," Chen said grimly. "Launch the Omega Protocol." Dr. Webb grabbed Veltar's arm. "You need to see this," he said. "You need to understand what we are willing to do to protect the galaxy. The Omega Protocol, Veltar learned, was humanity's last resort. When a containment breach threatened to spread beyond control, they would sacrifice everything in the affected area to prevent galaxy-wide disaster. On screen, Veltar watched as the human battle fleet positioned itself between the failing barrier and the mining colony. They were not trying to evacuate the civilians or destroy the breach. They were preparing to contain the explosion when they used their most powerful weapons. "Admiral," one of the fleet commanders reported, "we are in position. 47 ships, ready to execute Omega Protocol." Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her voice was steady but filled with pain. "Execute." Veltar watched in horror as the human fleet fired weapons that tore holes in space itself. The ships poured everything they had into containing the breach, knowing that the energy release would destroy them all. One by one, the ships disappeared in flashes of light that seemed to repair reality around them. When it was over, the breach was sealed. The mining colony was safe, and 47 human ships, with their crews of over 30,000 people, were gone. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation to prevent something far worse. "This happens how often?" Veltar asked, his voice shaking. "Major incidents like this? Maybe once or twice a year, Doctor," Webb replied. "Smaller sacrifices happen almost daily. We lose scouts, research teams, patrol ships, people who go too close to unstable areas and never come back." Chen walked over to them, her face showing the weight of command. "Now you understand," she said to Veltar. "This is why humanity cannot expand. This is why we cannot conquer the galaxy. Every ship we build, every person we train, every resource we gather, it all goes to keeping these things contained. The galaxy thinks we are holding back out of kindness or wisdom," she continued. "The truth is, we cannot afford to do anything else. If we stopped fighting for even a few years to build an empire, the barriers would fail, and everything would end." Veltar looked around the command center at the humans working to coordinate the aftermath of the sacrifice he had just witnessed. These people lived with the constant knowledge that reality itself depended on their vigilance. They fought an enemy that could erase them from existence, knowing that no one would ever thank them for their service. "How do you bear it?" he asked. Admiral Chen smiled sadly. "Because someone has to. And because the alternative is the end of everything we love." As Veltar prepared to leave, he realized that humanity was not just powerful. They were noble in a way that the galaxy had never seen. They had chosen to be guardians instead of conquerors, protectors instead of rulers. And they paid for that choice with everything they had. Veltar stood before the Galactic Council 3 weeks after returning from human space. The chamber was packed with representatives from every major species, all waiting to hear what he had discovered about humanity's strange behavior. But Veltar faced an impossible problem. The truth about the Voidborn was too dangerous to share openly. Admiral Chen had explained that knowledge of these creatures gave them more power over reality. The more beings that knew and feared them, the stronger they became. Yet the galaxy needed to understand why humanity deserved support, even if they could not know the full truth. "Honored delegates," Veltar began, "I have completed my investigation into human military capabilities and territorial policies. What I found explains their unusual restraint, but requires careful handling." Ambassador Zethka leaned forward in his seat. "What did you discover, Keeper Veltar?" "The humans are engaged in deep space research that requires enormous resources and manpower," Veltar said carefully. "They have discovered phenomena that pose a significant threat to galactic stability. Their entire civilization is dedicated to containing and studying these threats." This was true, even if it did not reveal the full scope of the danger. "What kind of threats?" asked the Kree delegate. Veltar had prepared for this question with help from human diplomats. "Spatial anomalies that can destabilize star systems, if not properly contained." The humans have developed unique technology to deal with these anomalies, but it requires constant vigilance and massive resources. Again, true but incomplete. The Therian ambassador rumbled thoughtfully. This would explain their defensive posture and lack of expansion. If they are dealing with galaxy-threatening dangers, their caution makes sense. Exactly, Veltar confirmed. But here is what the Council must understand. Humanity is protecting all of us. These anomalies, if left uncontained, would eventually threaten every inhabited system in the galaxy. The humans have taken on this burden voluntarily, asking nothing in return. Murmurs ran through the chamber as delegates discussed this revelation among themselves. The council leader raised a hand for silence. What do you recommend, Keeper Veltar? I recommend that we establish a classified support agreement with humanity. Provide them with resources and strategic assistance for their research projects. In return, they continue to handle these threats and maintain galactic stability. Over the following weeks, Veltar worked with a small group of council leaders and human diplomats to create what would become known as the Terran Protection Compact. The public records would state that humans had chosen to focus on deep space research and galactic peacekeeping. But the true signatories would know they were funding humanity's eternal war against the end of existence itself. The agreement was signed in a secret ceremony attended by only the most senior leaders from each major species. They committed to providing humanity with raw materials, rare elements, and manufacturing support. In return, human forces would continue their mysterious work in the deep spaces between stars. After the ceremony, Veltar found himself alone with the Council's ancient leader, who had lived for over 1,000 years and seen the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. You did not tell us everything, did you? The old being asked. Veltar chose his words carefully. Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. What I told the Council is accurate, but incomplete. The full truth would cause panic and possibly make the situation worse. The ancient leader nodded slowly. I have lived long enough to recognize when ignorance is safer than knowledge. The humans are fighting something terrible, are they not? Something that threatens the very existence of reality itself, Veltar confirmed quietly. Then we will support them and ask no more questions. 6 months later, Veltar received a message from Admiral Chen. The resource shipments from the Compact were allowing humanity to strengthen their containment efforts and establish new monitoring stations. 3 potential breaches had been detected and sealed before they could fully open. But the message also included grim news. Another human colony had been evacuated due to reality instability. 2 research teams had been lost to void-borne encounters. The war continued to demand its price. Veltar often found himself looking up at the stars and thinking about what was happening in the dark spaces between them. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the edges of reality itself. Human scientists studied impossible phenomena that could drive lesser minds insane. Human soldiers fought battles against enemies that existed to unmake everything. The galaxy continued its daily business, unaware of the constant danger. Trade routes operated safely because human forces ensured that reality remained stable along them. Diplomats argued about territorial disputes, while humanity quietly prevented the dissolution of space itself. One night, as Veltar was working late in his office, his communication system activated. Admiral Chen appeared on his screen, looking exhausted but determined. Keeper Veltar, I wanted to thank you personally for what you arranged with the Council. The support we are receiving has made a real difference in our containment efforts. It is the least the galaxy can do, Veltar replied, though most will never know what they owe humanity. That is how it must be, Chen said. The knowledge itself is dangerous, but knowing that some in the galaxy understand our burden makes it easier to bear. As the communication ended, Veltar heard alarms in the background of Chen's ship. Another emergency, another crisis that required immediate response. The war never ended, never paused, never gave humanity a moment's rest. Veltar returned to his work, but part of his mind remained focused on the terrible truth he now carried. The most powerful species in the galaxy had chosen to be its silent guardians. They fought an invisible war so that others could live in peace and ignorance. Somewhere in the deep darkness between stars, Admiral Chen was receiving reports of a new anomaly detected near the galactic core. Her response was immediate and without hesitation. Prep the fleet. No one else dies on our watch. The galaxy slept peacefully that night, never knowing how close they constantly came to never having existed at all. In the morning, there would be news of successful trade agreements, diplomatic breakthroughs, and scientific discoveries. Life would continue as normal for billions of beings across thousands of worlds. And in the spaces between those worlds, humanity would continue its eternal vigil, ensuring that tomorrow would come for everyone, except, perhaps, themselves. Veltar understood now why humans never claimed their galactic throne. They were too busy making sure the galaxy continued to exist for anyone to rule. That was both their greatest strength and their most frightening burden. And now, thanks to his investigation, at least a few beings in the galaxy understood the terrible price of their protection. The truth was indeed more dangerous than ignorance. But some truths were too important to remain completely hidden, even if they could never be fully shared.